Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message it was sent to us by one of our listeners. The message reads like this: Hello, my brother. How are you? Can you please post my story as anonymous? I am a 38-year-old South African lady. I have my own confession that I want to share with you, hoping that at the end of the day you are going to find someone who can assist me. My problem it started when my husband's small company managed to win this other local municipality tender, and after he had gotten that tender, then, as the money was flowing in, my husband he became a changed man. He started dating. Let me say that he started dating the women that was working in his company. I used to see a lot of messages, which meant that my husband was sleeping around with his workers. Such disrespect. And whenever these women would come over to our house, they would treat me with such disrespect because they knew what my husband was doing, and they didn't even respect me as their boss's wife. So when my husband's company was still very small, he used to have some of the merchandise in the garage. We had converted it and it had become something like a small storehouse. So most of the ladies that he would be working with, they would come so that they can pick up this merchandise. They would just come, start hooting at the gate, and when I would open for them, sometimes they won't even speak with me. And when it came to my husband, he started avoiding me at all costs whenever I would try to complain about it. Since my husband was now becoming a millionaire, the only solution that he had to solving any problems was that he would go out and he would try to buy a gift so as to quiet me. I still remember that on this other occasion, I found out that there was this other lady who had came and she had dropped her CVs. This lady, she used to stay in our neighborhood, but she was just renting in our neighborhood and she came from another location. So when she heard that my husband had this small company, she came and she left her CV. My husband was not there at home at that time. I was the one who picked up that CV that she had left at our gate. I then showed that CV to my husband, and that woman, my husband said that I was the one who was supposed to give her an interview. So I knew her. And at the time when I said that this lady, I don't think that she is fit for our company. And besides, I didn't like the way that my husband was now operating in his business, because his business now was more like a hiring and firing. A lot of workers were now working for him. If you would ask him what is the role of this person that you have recently accepted into the company, your husband will just say that their role will be very important in the future. For now, let them just do the basic work. So this was costing my husband a lot of money, and my husband was that type of a man whereby he didn't want me to enter too much into his business. He said that his company was his own company and my duty was to be his wife. So I had to keep quiet. The way that my husband was buying cars, it was not okay, because each and every day I was always praying to God, and I would be like, please God, do not let him come with a brand new car, because he would just come with a new car, park it in the garage, and the cars that he was buying, they were really expensive to maintain. I still remember this other BMW that he bought. He only drove that BMW for a few months, and when it came time for that car to go and get some basic repairs, it costed a lot of money. When I looked at that invoice, even though he had tried to hide that invoice for me, but it was just too much. I confronted him and he started shouting at me, since he was now being defensive in any kind of way, because he didn't want me to question him a lot. And at that same time, when he had hidden that invoice, As I was searching around after we had that confrontation, I then managed to get hold of his phone. That was when I saw those nude pictures of that woman who had came to drop those CVs at our house. I was really heartbroken and I cried like I had never cried before. On that day, those plans of his, like whenever I would have caught him cheating, him buying me expensive stuff, it was not working because as a woman, I had reached a point in my life whereby I was just too tired. It is not easy knowing that your husband is like a raging elephant bull that goes around sleeping with different women. You just feel dirty as his wife, and sharing is not caring at all when it comes to your men. So I told him that if he was going to continue in this way, it was far much better for me to return back to my parents. I thought that maybe this was going to knock him back to his senses since we had kids together. But I was surprised because he even encouraged me to take some time out and go and stay at my mom's place. So I went, I did this in anger. I took that decision whilst I was very angry, and knowing him, I thought that maybe he was still that man that he was before he had managed to secure that tender. But money, my brother, if you think that your husband loves you when you are still struggling financially, then you must be joking. Once your husband has something like $1 million in his account, that is when you will start to see if your husband loves you or not. Because at that time, when I returned back and when I started staying with my mom, he was providing like everything. He loaded some money into my mom's bank account for the upkeep and the money also for the transport, because now the kids had to travel a very long way to go to school. But emotionally, he was no longer there. He was just there financially. And as I was speaking with my mom then said that it was far much better for me to return back so as to secure my marriage, because leaving a millionaire husband just staying in that full house all alone with the money flying around, then one girl was going to be very, very clever and go and visit a traditional healer and steal this husband of mine away from me. We had to find another plan, but I had to return back to my husband. I then listened to my mom's advice, because she had said that if I go back to my husband, she was going to try to find a solution for me. My husband, she goes to those apostolic churches, so she said that she was going to speak with some prophets. I then returned back to my husband after a couple of months. That was when my mom said that she had been invited to this other church. It is a Zimbabwean church and it is an apostolic church. So these people usually they wear some garments, but the garments that they wear, they are not white in color. It is like they are a little bit bluish. Those that is the type of the uniform that they wear in that apostolic church. My mom was now going to that church, and she said that she had spoken with this other prophet in that Zim Apostolic Church. So that prophet was willing to assist my mother so that my marriage can be secured. The thing that my mom did is that after paying that prophet, they then came to my place. My husband was not there at that time. That was when he started holding some prayers and he was setting a lot of traps. And those traps, he said that as I was burying them, I was securing my marriage. Any woman that would enter into my yard will just feel like they do not want to date my husband if my husband will be willing to date that person. Because my husband, this is what he was doing. He was taking those young girls that were fresh out of college and he would promise them jobs and sleeping with them. So I wanted that thing to end. And after we had buried all of those charms, I don't know if I can say they are charms or if they are holy charms, because they were from church. We buried them at the four corners of the house, and immediately, my brother, it seemed to be working, because My husband, for a few months after that, my husband was a good man to me. He was treating me nice. Even the time, like when he was dating a lot of women, he didn't even care to touch me whilst we were in bed. But everything just turned around, and he told me that I was so beautiful and life was going according to plan. It then happened that my mom was supposed to travel to Zim, and this was going to be a first time going there, and they were going together as a church. And this was during this other Easter conference. They were told that there was this other mountain there in Zim where the church started, and if you go into that mountain and you can get some blessings. So the people who were here in South Africa worshiping in that church, they had planned that for that Easter they will be traveling to Zim. My mom then asked me if I wanted to join, because this was a request from that prophet who had assisted me. The prophet had said that all of those holy charms that we had planted at my house, they were just temporary items, so they needed more prayers so that they can be strengthened. And when I felt nervous, because knowing what my husband had become and being told that these prayers that we had digged in at the corners of my house, they were just temporary things, so I wanted something that was permanent. So I started preparing, and I said, don't you think that we are not going to make it, because Easter was fast approaching and we didn't have any passports or what? Then we were told that the passport was not necessary at all. Worst of all, we were South Africans, nothing was going to be difficult for us, we would be going with the bus. So we then paid the fees and we organized the tents, because we were going to be sleeping in the mountains. We went and we bought some tents that my mom will be sleeping in, and me and my youngest daughter will be sharing. After that, we then prepared some water and a lot of stuff. The church had even hired a bus, and all of the congregants from our area were sharing that bus. We traveled, my brother, until we had reached that place where this church started. I can say that we traveled for 2.5 days until we had arrived at the village where that church is said to have started. Once we were in that village, at the place where we arrived, there were a lot of people that were there to attend the Easter conference, and the church began. So whilst the church was happening, each and every one, they would go and visit whatever prophet that they wanted to visit so that they can get assistance. I then went with my mother, and we were assisted with this other woman who had been assigned to us by that prophet, since we didn't know how to speak the local language. But there it was easy, because a lot of people, they know how to communicate with English. So we were just communicating with English. We were then taken to this other woman who was staying in that same village. When we went to her house, at the back of her house, she had this other blue cloth that was hanging between two trees, and in front of that blue cloth, there was a long red cloth. The way that they design a red carpet, that is how she had laid out a shrine, but it was not a very long red cloth. So we were made to kneel in front of that blue cloth, and by the side there were some pots that are traditional pots that they use there in Zim, that are made out of clay. Then that woman said that the reason as to why my husband was cheating on me, it was because of my mother's younger sister. And when that woman said that all of these things were being caused by my mother's younger sister, my mom started crying, and I asked her why she was crying, and she said that she had been suspecting that her little sister was the reason as to why I was facing a lot of challenges in my home, because she had been having a lot of dreams, and in her dreams she was always chased by her little sister. That was when that prophet that prophetess asked us what we wanted to happen to my mom's little sister. And at that time, I didn't even understand the term go back to sender. And I said, if you want us to do whatever you have said, she said, go back to sender will be the best thing, because they were going to remove the charms that had been placed into my husband's body, and they would go back to that person who had sent those charms. And we didn't know that this meant that my mother's little sister was going to die. Then they gave us a small knife. They were small hunting knives, but they were not metallic hunting knives. They were made out of wood. I was told that I had to hold one, but my mom, she was the one who was supposed to strike. There was this other clay pot that was now placed in front of my mom, and my mom was told that since she was the one who was blood related to her sister, I could not strike my sister. I could not strike my mother's sister because it was taboo. You cannot kill your own mother. But at that time, they didn't tell us that we were killing someone. They just said that in their culture, it is taboo. I was not supposed to do that since my mother's little sister is my own sister. So my mom was handed another hunting knife made out of wood, and she was told that she had to strike at whatever she was going to see in that clay pot. There was something that was going to appear, and this thing that was going to appear, it will be a living thing. So she had to strike it until that thing had passed on. My mom later, when she was explaining to me, because at the time when she saw something appearing in that clay pot that had been placed in front of her, she was sort of like in a trance, like she had been possessed. They said that she was possessed by the Holy Spirit that was giving her power so that she can return these charms back to sender, who was a little sister. My mom started stabbing and stabbing. Later on, my mom told me that when she was looking into that clay pot just before the Holy Spirit had taken her into a trance and possessed her body, she saw that the clay pot was now being filled with water, but the water was not up to that level whereby it was flowing outside of the clay pot. It was just enough. Then she saw a fish that was swimming in that water. Then there was a sudden rush of power that entered into her body. Then she started stabbing into that clay pot until she had killed that fish that was swimming in that clay pot. After it was done, we don't know what happened to that clay pot because it broke into several pieces. I don't know if it was the way that my mom was stabbing, but it just broke into several pieces. After the prayers were done, I was given some charms, and these charms, I was told that when I returned back to South Africa, I had to place them inside the pockets of the trousers that my husband was supposed to wear the following day. And these charms, they were supposed to stay inside his pockets for the rest of the night. After the Insta conference was all done, that was when we returned back to South Africa. It was not a hassle at all. In fact, at the border, when they learned that we were South Africans trying to illegally cross back into South Africa, they started laughing at us. We arrived back home, and when I arrived back home, quickly before I could rest, I then took out these other trousers that I wanted my husband to wear the next day. He was actually happy. I think that the reason why he had been happy because I was not at home, it was because he had been seeing his girlfriends in freedom. So when we came back, he pretended to be in love. I selected the trousers that I selected for him to wear the next day, and he was happy about it. just before we had gone to sleep just before we had gone to sleep, I then took my handbag and I took this small plastic, and inside that small plastic there were two red clothes. They were very small, and inside those two red clothes there were some powdered holy prayers that had been given to me. So I placed them into my husband's pocket, and he then went to work the following day. Whilst he was at work, he started texting me and telling me, like he was confessing, telling me that he had been cheating on me for a very long time, even though I had caught him several times. But what he used to do is that whenever I would catch him cheating on me, he used to refuse a lot. But now here he was confessing, telling me that he didn't know what had gotten over him. After that, my brother, we then received the sad news, but this was like maybe after a year, after me and my husband had started loving each other again. That was when my mom's little sister mysteriously passed away. And on the day that she passed away, she told me that she wanted to come and visit me because there was something that had been bothering her for a very long time. She had been sick. She said that since that Easter where you went with your mom to Zim for the prayers, I have been sick and I can't get okay again. I just want to come to you so that I can speak with you. I felt that in her voice there was some sort of nervousness, like she wanted to tell me, but she said that I do not want to record this on WhatsApp. I want to speak with you face to face. But unfortunately, before she had came to visit me, that was when she passed away. And after we had buried her, my brother, recently I started to notice that, especially at night, if I am driving out of my yard, I have been seeing a shadowy figure. This shadowy figure, I always see it standing to this other tree. It is just close to the driveway that leads to the main gate, and this has been making me to be very scared. I don't know if I am just imagining things or if this is the ghost of my mom's little sister.